and look at the freshly coiffed Bailey Adams joining us. All right, so I put the picture on social. So how do you feel now that you got your lovely locks taken off yesterday as part of the cut and color event over there with the Bucs?
It feels really weird. I haven't had. I don't know if I've ever had hair this short. And the last time it was anywhere near this short was probably 2012, 2011.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's been a while, but it was awesome to be a part of the event. For the Bucs for allowing me to participate, and it was awesome day.
It looks good, buddy. It looks good. Listen, if it didn't look good, I would say it. What has been some of the responses? What have been some of the feedback that you've gotten from friends and family?
I've heard that a lot of people say they like it. It looks good. Mm-hmm. I think, in my own estimation, I think the beard helps. That's how I feel with I think the short hair. Eventually, I've been thinning for a while. I'll be bald eventually, I think, and I've got to keep the beard. I know that, but my co-host on the Pegasus podcast, our UCF podcast, told me he thinks I look wiser, which I don't know. I don't know if I agree with that. I don't feel any wiser, but pretty good feedback.
That's awesome, man. I know big UCF guy, but I wanted to get your opinion on the USF news with Michael Kelly. I mean, we're always going to be intertwined on I-4. We're always keeping an eye on UCF keeping an eye on USF. But just your initial thoughts on hearing MK going to Navy.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised. I mean, I guess not the fact that, I think he's a good idea. I think he's done a lot for USF. And I think just anytime that news happened very quickly, in my view, I wasn't really in tune with anything that was going on. I just saw this morning that he was being targeted by Navy, and then an hour later they were saying it was happening. So I mean, it's a tough spot and interesting spot for USF to be in with the president situation, and now needing an AD, and I guess with the stadium project, I know he was big on that, obviously. So it'll be interesting to follow from afar, at least. I say afar. I live in Tampa, so
yeah. No, I get what you're saying though, but yeah, and it's one of those things that just affects our area, and then depending on who they bring in, right? There's like a ripple effect of, let's say they do bring in Rob Higgins, maybe he's the guy, and then how does that affect the Tampa Bay Sports Commission? Sometimes there's a domino effect when it comes to this whole thing. I want to ask you about the interview with Todd Bowles. You guys did a great job on that. You and Scott Reynolds, you had him for a while. To be able to interview the head coach of a National Football League team for that long. I mean, it just shows that the trust that the Bucs have with you guys over there at Pewter Report. So congratulations on that. Really well done. What were some of your big takeaways from sitting down with Todd for that long?
Yeah, thank you, first of all. But it was awesome. I think there was so much from it, and I think we're still kind of, the whole staff's kind of working through all the different things we want to put out there content-wise. But I think the overall takeaway and kind of some of the feedback we've gotten, and I think it was something we maybe expected, was Bucs fans getting a chance to see Todd Bowles in a different setting, a little bit looser, a little bit more joking around, a little bit more laughing than, the guy. I know he gets all the criticism for being very stoic on the sideline and always having his arms crossed, and kind of the same criticisms that Tony Dungy would get back in the day. But I think that in an overall sense was interesting to kind of see him in a different light for us and for Bucs fans. But obviously we asked him about it too, and he said he gets all of his yelling and all that out Monday through Saturday. He said Sundays he'll be fine, and it was a great time talking with him. And I think the other big thing, it was actually very late in the interview, and it was something one of our commenters, our super chatters, asked him about playing so much off coverage and saying, "Why?" I just curiously, I want to know, why do you like playing off coverage so much? And Todd kind of just said, I don't like. It's not something that he likes to do. I think it's the kind of the delineation there was that it's something that he's felt like they've had to do from a personnel standpoint, and that he would love to, and I think expects to play less off coverage this year and more man to man. We saw some of that, in some of the drills they were doing in OTAs yesterday, actually.
I love that, because I think that's a huge part of it too. And I've been kind of saying that, and it's weird because I was one of the guys that was like very staunch at be careful with Todd Bowles, because half of my family are Jets fans. And I watched that just go downhill. And I was like, be careful, because everybody was. And now I've gone to being one of the loudest Todd Bowles supporters here. And Matt and Scott themselves are like, Jay, you were saying don't, be so quick to go to Liam Cohen. And, you don't know what you're going to get for a guy like Liam Cohen. And that was another point of discussion. People are like, why are they playing off? So, well, you can't rush with 4 guys, and he's sitting back there all day. Of course you got to play off because you're going to beat every single time. Do you think then, I guess, kind of going down the next path there, if they can get to the passer better with Hassan Reddick and with, kind of just 4 guys rushing, do you think we're going to see more press coverage and just more of Todd being able to be more creative? Because we know, especially those blitz packages, man, that's when really Todd is at his best.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's a reason why the big emphasis has been getting home with 4 and getting after the quarterback with those 4 guys. Obviously, last year they did a good job up the middle with Vita and with Kalijah. Like that's a duo that was fantastic. And even though the sack numbers weren't there for Yaya Diaby, I think he made a lot of strides in a lot of areas. Now you've got that other guy on the other side, Hassan Reddick, where I think it should be, they expect it, and I think even with some of the depth and some of the guys they've added, Chris Braswell coming on a little bit, and David Walker, the draft pick this year, I think they feel like they'll be able to be more consistent getting pressure with those 4 guys. And we've seen in the past when they have played that man coverage, press man, Jamel Dean's great at it. And Zion McCollum can do it too. He's got the physicality, he's got the length, and he can handle that job. So I think if they put themselves in a position with the pass rush, yeah, they'd love to play more up to the line with their corners.
Yeah, and I look at when a guy like Jamel Dean and some of the teams that they played when you're going up against like Philly, right? When they're playing them press with them, like why are they so successful against Philly when so many other teams? That's when I feel like they play their best. And they're like, screw it, we're going to play press. We're going to get up on these guys, and if they can do that against everybody, right? I think they'll be in good shape. I got a lot of faith that with the new improved pass rush, things are going to be much different with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. What about yesterday at OTAs? To be able to be out there, obviously only 2 days there for voluntary OTAs, but what stood out to you just watching what you saw on the field yesterday?
Yeah, I think probably over the last 2 weeks, or the 2 OTAs that we've been able to be there for, Tez Johnson. I know he's the 7th round receiver, and we were talking a lot more about Emeka Egbuka being the 1st rounder, but it's struck me how good Tez Johnson is at just getting open. He's able to win off the line of scrimmage. Obviously, he's a quick guy, shifty. He had the big play yesterday. Kyle Trask hit him for about a 50-plus yard gain, touchdown, whatever you want to call it, in the 11-on-11s. But I think him and even Egbuka has made some interesting plays in terms of, like, I know there's been this want to compare him to Chris Godwin. And I'm trying to get away from it, but it's hard to when you actually watch him play, because a lot of, obviously with Godwin not out there right now, a lot of the routes that Egbuka's running, a lot of the ways he's winning is similar to what you'll see from Chris Godwin. So from the one standpoint, the rookie receivers are making some good waves early on. And then something that Todd Bowles talked about yesterday a lot, and it was because of what's happened on the field, is the inside linebacker position, which I think has been the big question all offseason. Is obviously Levante's back. They signed Anthony Walker Jr. as a reserve guy. They're banking on Servassier Dennis, really staying healthy and being that guy they believe he can be. We saw last week Servassier had an interception in practice. He's been doing that the last few years. We saw yesterday he had another pass breakup. We saw toward the end of practice, Deion Jones had an interception. And he's a guy that might be, a factor as a depth piece at inside linebacker. Todd Bowles loves the depth they have right now at that position. And that was something, for it feeling like the biggest question, to hear Todd Bowles that happy with where they are there. That's really good news if you're the Bucs.
Yeah, it's a good point too. And I think the argument that we could just make about the corners covering guys, I guess you can make that same argument about the inside linebacker position, because I don't know if you agree with me, but going forward, it's not been the issue. To me, it's going back when those balls get dropped over their heads. We saw it, especially against Atlanta. My God, how many times it happened? Like, it doesn't matter who was in there, but they were just dropping the ball right over the linebacker, and you're like, what the hell's going on here? Whether it's a lack of communication or just a lack of athletic ability at all. I think if you can get a better pass rush and you can get those inside linebackers more focused on going forward than backwards, Bailey, I think that could help them as well.
I think so. But I think really the biggest key, and this is what I think it can kind of get scary for the Bucs, is Servassier Dennis needs to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And putting it all on one guy who hasn't been able to do so in the last couple of years, putting it all on him is tough. But you saw it early on last year. He, as a coverage linebacker, was miles ahead of where KJ Britt was. And when he was on the field, you kind of see, all right, sooner rather than later, he's going to get more snaps than KJ. He's the more athletic guy. He can rush the passer, he can blitz up the middle, but he can also cover. Then he goes down with a shoulder injury in week 4, and you see what happens against the Falcons in week 5. And, when KJ Britt is asked to play coverage more often. And KJ, I think, was a guy who, as Todd Bowles would call him, very heady. He knew the scheme. He knew what he was doing, but just, I think, was a little more limited athletically. Sarasia Dennis is not. So when they've got him in the game and fully healthy, I think that's going to play a huge difference, as well as, like you said, being able to get that pressure on the quarterback and have these linebackers going forward rather than kind of having to sit back there. That'll help too.
What about the other guys from the rookie class? Some of the guys on defense, especially.
Yeah, well, so David Walker was the one who we noticed last week. It was obviously they're not in pads or anything, but just some of the ways he was, as Scott Reynolds put it, teleporting into the backfield. He was just the ball was snapped and he was already there. Obviously, he wasn't facing Luke Gedeke or Tristan Wirfs yet, and there weren't pads on. Unfortunately, yesterday David Walker wasn't practicing, didn't have his helmet with him. He was out there, but obviously nothing I don't think too concerning yet, but that was a little unfortunate to see. Just we wanted to see a little bit more of him. But the corners, it's good to see Benjamin Morrison. He's moving around real well. He's doing the full team drills now, as opposed to just the individuals that he was doing during rookie minicamp. Things have cooled off a little bit, I guess, with Jacob Parrish. I know he had in rookie minicamp, he had 2 picks, but still coming along well, I think. And that depth at corner with those 2 guys added to the mix with Jamel Dean and obviously with Zion, it's looking good for that group.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Jamel Dean because I think people have gotten to the situation where I think Jamel Dean on defense and looking at Rachaad White on offense, you're getting certain people saying, "Oh, we'll just trade him. We have a lot of depth there," and I'm just like, never trade from a position of depth because you never know, man. Especially with those 2 guys, like you just don't know. What do you make of the 2025 season ahead for Jamel Dean on defense and then Rachaad White offensively?
I think maybe bringing in the corners they did in the draft has to help at least push Jamel, and Jamel knows, obviously, he hasn't been able to stay healthy either, and he's just as frustrated as all of you all are, all the fans out there. And the thing with Jamel, though, is that he's never been a bad corner. I know he doesn't get the takeaways like you'd like him to, but he is consistently graded out, and just you look at the tape, he is playing impeccable coverage when he's out there healthy. It's just the problem with him has been him playing 13 games a year and him missing parts of other games and stuff like that. So I think this year, what's so interesting, I know there was all the chatter this offseason about maybe they move on from him and they bring in another starter, the way they did with Carlton Davis last year. Mm-hmm. But it never really worked out in that they didn't have that replacement ready right away. So it didn't make sense to push him out the door and not know who your guy is going to be. As far as this season, I think obviously it all hinges on his health, but you might see him get pushed a little bit. With Benjamin Morrison, the healthier he gets, the more snaps he can get, the more he learns the defense. But it's not a bad problem to have when you've got all of these guys who are seemingly going to be capable starters. And who knows, maybe being able to rotate, some of these guys in and out helps keep Dean fresher and keeps him healthy.
Yeah, I love that. You can never have enough guys. And it was the same thing with the Rays a couple of years ago where people were telling me like, "Oh yeah, we have so much pitching," and all of a sudden 3/5 of the guys got hurt in a week. I was like, "This is why you don't trade away starting pitching." And Zach looked at me, he's like, "Yeah, I think you were right about that one, bud." I'm like, "Yeah, man, you never know." And I look at the running back spot, and with, like I said, with Rachaad White, Bucky Irving, like Bucky had 3 different injuries last year. Maybe not, critical, but like banged up. He's not the biggest guy. He runs hard. So, if you lose Rachaad in the offseason next year, then it is what it is. But Rashaad's also proven that he can stay healthy. So we got to be cognizant of that as well. I've asked a couple of people this question. I wanted to get your 2 cents on it. Could Baker Mayfield have done anything better so far in his tenure with Tampa Bay? I just feel like, obviously other than winning a Super Bowl, but as far as assimilating himself to the Tampa Bay community, getting acclimated to this Buccaneers team, and just really taking the bull by the horns, Baker has just been phenomenal here in Tampa. Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree. I think somehow the Bucs found a way to strike gold there. It was obviously, it was credit to them for giving him that opportunity and believing in him to come in, and also credit to him to take that opportunity, like you said, by the horns, and he has done everything right. Obviously, you can nitpick and say, well, if you look back at the divisional round 2 years ago against the Lions, he had that late pick, and if they go on and win that game. But as far as you look at it, and I was having this conversation with Matt Matera yesterday at practice, just we got on the topic of different, legacies, Ring of Honor, all that stuff. And I'm thinking like something that I've written about already, but kind of going to write about more is Baker Mayfield's been here for 2 seasons. And I know the Bucs don't have an illustrious quarterback history, but if he has a couple more seasons or even this season and next, similar to what he's done already, statistically, he's going to be up there probably atop the leaderboards of all-time Bucs quarterbacks. And it's just crazy for a guy who was pushed out the door in Cleveland, never really got off the ground in Carolina, and then obviously finished up that season in LA. No one really would have predicted that he'd come in here and do what he's done so far.
Yeah, I'm looking at it now. He's already top 10 in passing yards.
Yeah.
So he's got 8,500 now. Let's just at the low end, let's just say 3,000 for the next 2 years, right? You're looking at 14,500, right? He'd be 4th behind Jameis, Vinny, and Brady. And that's 3,000, bro. He could get 4,000, you know what I mean? Close to 5,000. Yeah. If that's the case, you're looking at a guy, even if he just throws for 3,000 this year, he's already going to be probably 7th behind Doug Williams and ahead of Brad Johnson. That's wild. You're so spot on with that, man.
Look at the passing touchdowns too. I'll tell you that. Like he threw, what was it, 28, I think, in 2023, and then last year, 41, I think. So he's already up there. I think
he's already 7th. He's
okay.
7th. He's 1 behind Trent Dilfer. He's 4 behind Doug Williams for 5th. Mm-hmm. And then he's 8 behind Vinny for 4th. Yeah. So let's say like he's got 69. He's going to throw 11, right? So he's going to tie Josh Freeman. So yeah. So if he just has a normal year this year, it's going to be Winston, Brady, and Baker Mayfield.
Yeah. It's unbelievable when you look at his story and how he's kind of gotten to this point, and he has completely not even really revived his career. He's just completely changed it. It's not like he's just surviving as a starting. He's like up to the level of being a top 10 quarterback. And I think there's no better example. I don't know. I'm sure you probably remember back when he was first drafted, how much, of a feud he and Colin Cowherd had.
Oh yeah.
And then lately going around, I haven't seen the video yet, but there was a thumbnail on a Cowherd show about, it has Baker Mayfield on it, and it says like top 10 quarterback. And like at this point, like Cowherd's he's completely turned around, and we're talking about Baker Mayfield being potentially a top 10, top 12 quarterback in the league.
It's crazy. I just watched him a couple weeks ago too, and it just, my goodness, he had such a freaking hard on for Baker Mayfield. Like, it was like, my God, man. Like, you look at all these other things that quarterbacks do, and you're like, oh yeah, you didn't run to the sideline. He goes, did you watch the first 3 touchdowns where I ran right to the sideline? I was running in my student section. And now it's like it's like pulling teeth with Colin. He doesn't want to admit it, but now, I mean, you got to say it. And I asked this question yesterday. I asked you, Frank Ragnow retiring for the Detroit Lions is a big deal to me, because I looked at Detroit going into the season, and I think you're going to hear it a lot more now. But I was very buyer beware when it comes to the Lions in 2025 because of a couple things. One, their road schedule is freaking crazy. I think they got to go to Baltimore, go to Kansas City. They got to go play the Rams. I think they got to go to Philly and Washington. Like, their road schedule is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you lost both your coordinators, right? We saw it with Philly a couple years ago when they lost Steichen and when they lost Jonathan Gannon. They had trouble that next season, and people were wondering if Nick Sirianni was going to get fired. It's crazy how that happens, right? You're also getting Aiden Hutchinson coming off of an injury, right? Sometimes it takes a little while. We know that with Chris Godwin. And Jared Goff, even though he's a good quarterback, there's certain times where he's not his best. And if you're having Jared Goff in a shootout against Lamar and Patrick Mahomes and Stafford and Jalen Hurts and Jaden Daniels all in one year, who's to say that their defense won't take a page out of the Bucs playbook from the regular season last year and be able to even just win half of those games? What do you make of that situation? And also, kind of parlaying into that, I've got the Bucs as the number 2 team in the NFC right now because of all the changes on defense and bringing back their offense. Where do you have the Bucs ranked in the NFC?
Yeah, I think it's tough with the Lions because we just did I think it was last week, we did a roundtable of the Bucs' biggest threat in the NFC, and we don't like to repeat answers. Obviously, the answers, you can pick the Eagles, you can pick the Rams. I ended up, I think maybe with like the third pick because other people had claimed those teams. I picked the Lions, and
Yeah,
I was like, listen, yeah, I was like, listen, the Lions, they've got too much talent to just kind of say, all right, that's it. Like they've missed their window. On the contrary, it does almost feel a little bit like last year might have been that window. And I think that the retirement of Ragnow obviously is another reason why you can kind of be a little concerned about them. And I think even beyond that, their division was tough last year, and it's going to be tougher this year. You know, Minnesota's not going to go away. I know they don't have Darnold, and we'll see how McCarthy does, but Green Bay, I think, is going to be real good. I think Chicago is going to be a lot much improved. So that's going to be a dogfight in that division. As far as where the Bucs are right now, I think I'd still probably have them right around 3. I think the Eagles probably get the benefit of the doubt as the defending champs. And then I think the Rams, I think something about them, and they're kind of reaching like the end of that window, obviously. But I think they're in a really good spot to potentially be really, really good this year. So I think I'd have the Bucs right there at 3, though. And I think this team, the more I think about the depth they have at these certain positions, and the more I think about, if they can keep the offense looking, even a little bit like it was last year under Liam Cohen with Josh Grizzard, like I think they're in a really good spot to be very good this year and potentially make a deep run.
What do you make of Josh Grizzard so far from what we know? And it's hard to tell because we haven't really seen much, but any hesitancy, any worry about Josh Grizzard taking over for Liam Cohen?
I don't have any right now. I don't think there's really anything we've seen that would make me feel any trepidation about it. I think when they made the hire, I loved it. I think I might have even talked with you about it back then.
Yeah.
And there's nothing I've seen obviously so far that would make me feel any different. I think the one real interesting thing we were talking about yesterday at practice was you're seeing a little bit more vertical passing. You're seeing some more deep shots, and something that we kind of took away from that is, Baker, I think last year completed something around 71% of his passes, I think it was. Maybe that drops a little bit this year, but you see some more explosives down the field. Obviously, you've got Mike Evans who can win down the field as it is, but you also now add in the fact that you've got a quick guy like Tez Johnson, and you've got different Jalen McMillan. We saw him with some 25+ yard catches last year. Devin Culp, even I think he averaged something around 18 yards per catch when he was in there. You've got some guys that can go with some speed that can win down the field, and I think you might try to see Grizzard, exploit that a little bit more.
What does that spell for a guy like Trey Palmer? I know people have been asking, or we're seeing on the internet, it could be an option for the Steelers. They're looking for more weapons for Mason Rudolph or Uncle Rico or any of the guys that they're getting, Ashawanda, whatever this guy, whenever he's ready to come up. Trey Palmer just seems to be the odd man out, man. What do you see? Do you think he makes the opening 53? It's getting harder and harder to see that, especially with, you mentioned Tez Johnson splashing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't see him right now on the opening 53. It's just gonna be tough because that position is suddenly ridiculously deep. Obviously, Mike and Chris at the top, Jalen McMillan. You've got your first rounder in Abuka. You've got Tez Johnson, who I think is going to make his way in there. That's 5 right there. And then you've got a whole group of guys. I'm bound to forget somebody, but you've got Trey Palmer. You've got Sterling Shepard. You've got Cameron Johnson, who they liked a lot last year when he was healthy. You've got Ryan Miller. You've got a whole group of probably 6 or 7 receivers vying for maybe 1 spot, maybe 2 spots. So it's going to be tough for Palmer and any of those receivers, really.
What about Rakim Jarrett? He's still around? One. That's another guy. I really like Rock, man. That's the thing, man. Yeah. It sucks. But yeah, I'm with you. And it's, they brought Sterling Shepard back. They could have just told him like, hey man, we're good and you can retire, because he was on the couch last year. So I think they like that reliability. I think they like, having him. He was on the practice squad last year, was able to come in. You never know. It's a good guy to have. Before I let you go, Bale, I want to ask you this. Dave Velasquez is a big fan. Does Shiloh fit into the scheme this year? It seems like he's another guy that's really acclimated himself well, and he's looking at a position right there where there is, all right, well, who's going to step up and take this spot? What do you think about Shiloh and his chances?
Yeah, I think as it stands right now, I'd be surprised if he's on the opening 53, but I think he's done everything the right way, and he's acclimated himself really well so far since he's gotten to Tampa. And obviously there's always going to be a lot of attention on him. It really is going to come down to what he looks like in training camp, especially those joint practices. and then the preseason games. It would probably take a lot to make the roster right out of the preseason, but if he's a guy who wants to stick around on a practice squad and work at it, I think he's somebody who could be in there.
Who are the other safeties then? I mean, been thinking about it because Tyke's probably going to be that guy, right? You think they give him the chance, and possibly something. Izian's going to get a chop, but I feel like there's a lot of guys kind of in that, not the starting tier, that second tier. Like, all right, who's going to step up and take that opportunity? Because if Shallow outperforms that guy, he could have a shot.
Yeah, he could. It's all the numbers game, really, how they kind of qualify each guy. Because right now at safety, you're looking at Antoine. Obviously, you're looking at Tyke. Izian, do they look at him? Is he being kept in that group of corners they're going to keep, or is he safety? Is he kind of just a hybrid? Kayvon Merriweather's a guy they still really like, and I think will be in the mix there. Another undrafted guy they brought in and I guess gave a lot of money to was J.J. Roberts from Marshall. So there are certain guys that it'll all depend on how many corners they keep, how many safeties, how many nickels. It is going to be a numbers game. So, I mean, Shiloh's going to be in the mix. It just we'll see kind of how he looks once it's all time to get out there under the lights and everything.
Bailey J. Adams 22 on Twitter/X. You can go check him out over there. Of course, always check out our friends at Pewter Report. They're going to break down the interview with Todd Bowles at 4:00 today. So make sure you subscribe to their YouTube channel and go check them out over there. Bailey, always a pleasure, my friend. Your hair looks fantastic, buddy. You are the best. Thanks so much. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, Jay. I appreciate you.
You got it, buddy.